Welcome to the Hot Young Designers Club podcast.
I'm Rebecca Plum, your big sister.
And I'm Shaun, your GBF.
We're not that hot or that young,
but we believe it's a state of mind that helps us build adaptable and profitable businesses.
We rely on the support of our design besties to get through each day.
So let's explore the emotional, practical, and humorous sides of being interior designers.
Welcome to the club. Hey, Shaun.
What's up, Rebecca?
We're back. We're here.
We're here physically. Mentally, It's the full summer meltdown.
I feel like, this is like behind the scenes, but I feel like we haven't had a Shaun and Rebecca recording in a while. So I guess that's why I said that.
We do have some amazing guest episodes coming up, some of them might have already come out by the time you hear this, but we've been really spending a lot of time getting quality guests, doing our song and dance to get some of the best out there for our hotties.
So I feel like we've been behind the scenes working hard to make sure that we are balancing out the podcast so that we are taking care of our own mental and business needs, but providing good content for the hotties. And there's a few things we've put into place. And I think number one, supporting our sponsors is super helpful.
Yes.
So click on the call to actions.
We really can't do this without them. We
really can't. And we can't do it without you helping them. So we love you.
Yeah. That's a big deal. I know it's weird. I know it's a weird thing because for us, it's like, remember, there is sort of this transactional side, but as business people, it connects very easily for me of like, yeah, if we do work, but nobody buys it, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't go anywhere. And for the hotties who have really been the deep cuts hotties a la 2020 joining us, like the ebbs and flows of being able to keep up with our businesses, keep our spouses somewhat satisfied with our relationship status and not lose our minds. The struggle is in all capitals real,
legit.
So it makes a big difference. It's not just help us out. It's we spend a lot of time and energy to find sponsors that we know are really important and valuable to designers and that we trust and believe in. We were approached by people who were like, we will literally just put any ad in your show, just give us your airtime and you might get like a Bojangles chicken commercial. We just don't want that. We don't want the generic ad space. We really want to work with vendors that we think are important and suppliers that we think are important to us and valuable. So thank you, hotties, for supporting them.
Our filter is always, is this helpful to our listeners? So thank you for supporting them. Rating and reviewing our podcast where you're listening definitely helps us get more ears. Mm-hmm. And giving us feedback. We love when you're in our DMs. We just got an amazing email this morning that I literally burst into tears.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you.
It was really sweet.
It's just, it's a lot. It's like when you do work, it's like if your kids never say thank you. And then when they do, you just shatter into a million pieces.
Especially if it's the moment you needed to hear it, So
yeah,
I know we're if you are out there just kind of feeling lost and dazed and confused, you're not alone. We all have our moments. So,
we affirm you. We know you're there. We know that there's ups and downs in this, and we're happy that we can be someone you identify with or hear what we're going through and know that there's not always an easy pathway out. And sometimes that's just enough to know, I'm on the right path. There's no magic solution that nobody told me about.
And that's why we do this. So
yeah,
a couple other fun things going on in the Patreon. Mm-hmm. If you're not familiar, Patreon is a monthly subscription to support content creators, and in exchange, our Patreon specifically, we have a little bonus. We've been doing these behind the scenes episodes where we're kind of getting a little more personal about actual things happening in our business.
It's the real
That's the
of
real.
the real. Because yes, I'm not going to talk about the exact client. I'm not
We
naming
gotta be
names anywhere,
professional
but like
publicly. Yeah.
we've realized more and more as what did we look at? Now there are almost 24,000 unique listeners of the show over all time. So not necessarily all at once, but like that's a lot of ears on content, and that is hard to imagine everyone hearing all the intimate details of projects and that stuff. So Patreon's where we're putting some of those conversations where we really need to be more vulnerable as designers. We're putting it behind the scenes.
Yeah. And we also do every month our Hottie Hangouts, which we've had a few now, and they're so fun. We've had such a great crew of people. We learn from everyone coming into them. This is not like us doing our dissertation from
Yeah,
our
we're
pulpit.
not teaching like a lecture or
No.
anything. It's more just like this is a topic that we know is important and we want to have a chance to talk real time with other designers about it. And I've been leaving with notes of what other designers are doing. I'm like,
Yeah.
I could easily put that in my process. Like, why not? Like, why? Sometimes it just takes hearing it to go, wait, why did it take so long for the light bulb to come on for me and realize that this was that easy?
Yeah. And of course, like you guys are all business owners. We know you're all smart doing cool things that we haven't thought of yet either. So this month in July, our next one, we are talking about buying vintage and antiques and just a little bit, hopefully, digging into process, like how people do that and how they handle it differently. We may
And
have a
the
special
warnings.
guest.
I would love I'm hoping to gain from that some buyer beware or before you go into it, like gird your loins type of stuff. Like there's a whole bunch that goes with that. And I know.
And client
And
communication and positioning and stuff.
right. And then if you missed out on the June Hottie Hangout, that was around nurturing clients through the buying cycle and being able to think about how we can just like speak to the clients no matter what phase of a process they're in, from just discovering their needs to not even knowing the need for working with a designer or why they should. So we talk through some
To
different ideas and
past clients,
strategies.
like your past
Please come
clients are
back and
also
buy
part of
again.
your, yeah, or refer.
Yeah.
So we have some fun ideas. Like I think we have one coming up about like holiday gifts. Like we just want to like bring a lot of ideas to the table because all the things we struggle with. So please join. We would love to have you.
Yeah. And if you've missed past ones, you can always listen to the recordings when you join on the Patreon. You can go back and listen to the past exclusive episodes or the recordings of the Hottie Hangouts. So you won't be live in real time to ask questions, but you can still get the value out of everything everybody else asked and what we talked about. So thank you for supporting our loyal Hottie tier.
Yeah. Okay. So shall we get into this juicy topic?
Okay. But one more thing.
Oh.
We're going to Las Vegas Market in July.
Shoot. I'm sorry.
And we're going to be on Sunday, July 30th. So this will be like I think a lot of people kick off their market on the Sunday, but Sunday afternoon, stay tuned. We'll post as we get closer on our Instagram. So you'll know exactly like where to show up, what time, everything. But Sunday afternoon, we'll be at a panel with a number of other podcast hosts, and Rick from Design Biz Survival Guide is going to be there. Luann Nigera is going to be there, our own little design community celebrity queen. It's going to be fantastic. We're really stoked to be a part of it. We would love to have your support to fill the room, because part of my inner saboteur is like, they're all going to laugh at you or no one's going to be there. And I just don't want to see like most of the room empty. I want to feel like we packed the palace, you know?
Well, yeah.
But honestly, if like 8 people showed
head.
up, it'd be great too. I'm so sorry.
Well, like we're throwing a party and nobody's coming, but
it's like my 12-year birthday basement party, and It's like that scene in
All
13
the
going on
balloons are
30. Like,
stuck to the walls and no one's there.
and we have 7 giant pizzas, and it's just me and my one best friend. Like,
and your twin brother. At least you have a twin.
that was always the thing growing up. I always knew that, like, between my brother and I, we were like built-in buddies. It was going to be no problem for us to like always have someone to play with or who would be at a party that you knew. But yeah, I don't know. Between all of us who are on the panel, I'm sure we'll help fill the room, but we'd love to see hotties. We're planning on not booking up time right after so we can actually, like talk with you guys that if you come to Vegas Market, we're not planning on running off right when the panel completes. So we would love to see you and spend a couple minutes talking with you guys before, we move on to the rest of Market.
And we're trying to have little merch treats too. So we'll be talking about it more. We'll talk about more of it on IG. So hopefully you're following us there. And so if you are coming, fly in Sunday morning or Saturday and come
Join
us.
us. Please. We'd love to see you. On with the show?
On with the show.
Let's do it.
Okay. So I feel like in every Facebook group we're in, this is like topic number 1.
It's become a 4-letter word for designers, even though it's not a 4-letter word. But
or 7.
Yeah. The 7-letter word everyone hates, shopped.
Shopped. So clients of a certain ilk love to shop us. And I mean, this was something I really struggled with too. And I mean, the title is How We Stopped Getting Shopped. Of course, it still kind of will happen. But I think I've gotten way better at doing the work up front to make it clear and not in like, you don't have to be mean. You just have to educate and vet.
Yeah, people don't know what they don't know. And I think there's also the fear I don't know if it's just me, but like, I think a lot of it comes from clients who haven't worked with a designer before, who don't or maybe they've worked with a designer who didn't do purchasing or buying or whatever. Like, I think they don't understand how it works. And so when they're unsure, they feel like it's their job to fill in the gap when they're like, oh, I don't know about that sofa. And then they think, oh, I'll just go be the problem solver and I'll go find it. And they're not used to working with a service provider whose job is literally to do that.
Yeah. So some of that, I think, is the weeding out upfront. Like those types of clients I've gotten better at spotting. And there's nothing wrong with them as people. It's like I'm probably that person, but I'm not a great fit for a full service designer. So figuring that out up front and maybe you offer a different solution, that's a win-win. Like that's why Shaun and I do designer on calls or consultation only or design only.
Mm-hmm.
That gives them the chance to work with us, but limits our interaction and expectations are pretty clear.
Yeah, it's because I feel like you don't always see all the signs up front. Like, I wish there was like a universal red flag detector. There's just like not. But pretty quickly, I start to pick up on now. I don't know if this is like one of those questions I started asking people during my discovery calls is tell me exactly what you're expecting a designer to do for you, or what do you like? What do you imagine the interior designer is going to do for you? And people fill in the gap. Like the right people who fill in my gap for that are the people who are like, we just need someone to help get us from like the ideas all the way to the finish line. And I'm like, okay. Oh, great. You're describing concept to completion, everything. I love that. That's what I want to hear is like, we want someone to get us all the way through. But the people who respond with like we need help making sense of everything, or I just don't know if all the stuff goes together. They're not describing I feel like full service.
The use of the word just is my trigger. So it's
like a trauma response.
Well, but it's like it minimizes my side of the street
Yeah.
and prioritizes what they just
They
want me to do.
Yeah.
And that's to me like, okay, you're a designer on call. You're a consultation. And because I created a solution for them, I don't have any animosity or annoyance.
Resentment. Yeah.
No, because it is what it is. So, and it's not like bestie time or anything. I'm helping
And
you, but you still get to do the stuff they like to do, which is go deep on Pinterest, look for sales, possibly find a unicorn.
And I've described that to people. So I think that's like the first step of like not getting shopped anymore is like this whole let's vet, let's weed out. But then I describe to people, I'm like, I know it looks easy to do all of this, but like just so you know, like here are some examples of what goes wrong. Like you think you know what you're going to pick, and in full service, I will be there to help solve all the stuff that goes on. But in these more client driven ones where they're in the driver's seat, I tell them, I'm like, I know you think it just sounds like procurement and ordering is what I do, but like that's the smallest part. That's just the fastest way to describe it. But there's so much more that goes involved in this, and all the returns and the back and forth and the damages. And I think once they really understand that, then they can at least make an educated decision on, well, what am I really looking for and what do I want? And I find that with shopping, I don't feel like anyone's ever shopped the exact thing I've presented. Like I've never presented a bar stool and then they're like, I found it cheaper here. What
I've
they've
had someone
done
do
is
it.
like find, for me, they've went and gone and said like, well, we wanted something cheaper or we wanted something different. And then they go find a different one. They're like, would this one work? And I'm like, no. And here's why. And usually it's a no, here's why, because I'm like, what you found was a counter stool and you need a bar stool and it's cheaper because it's smaller. And and like, or the dimensions are wrong and here's why. Or I know the vendor who makes this and it's going to last you about 2 to 3 years based on the way you use your stuff. And so generally, I would say it comes from an absence of value. Like they don't understand. I either missed something they wanted or there was an overriding factor that they were looking for that I didn't like, what I presented didn't have for them. But some people, I consider that still being shopped in a sense because whatever I gave to them wasn't what they wanted. It wasn't the thing they wanted to click yes and pay the proposal for. And to me, that feels the same as being shopped of like, I found it $50 cheaper over here. Like they still want to
I
round
had
you.
somebody shop me for the exact same items. I might have said this on here before, but she didn't believe that it was not available. And she found it. So it was a 4-hands or it was dining chairs. And I had the dates of when it was coming in. And then, but she found it on Burke Decor or something and it said it was available. I'm like, okay, well, go ahead. Like, I mean, I'm directly with the manufacturer. I've never had them really be that off. And she ordered it. And then sure enough, Burke Decor hadn't updated their database. So I think really talking about it up front, like our procurement guide, soft pitch, available in our shop, talks, it really does a lot of the work to explain the business model. You can customize it to however your actual business model works, but I think like that page, like how designers make money and that explanation, it's so clear and I don't know, it's like a way for us all to make this a clear exchange and no one's trying to, pull one over on someone.
Yeah, like I'm not trying to make you feel as a customer, as a buyer, as a potential client. I'm not trying to get one over on you.
Yeah. Or
And I
I'm
feel like
just making choices based on money.
Yeah, like I pick I pick this stool because it gives me my highest profit margin. It's like usually no. Like I don't have the time to search around for like what will give me the widest margin. I'm usually working the other way, which is what generally fits into the budget of the project and the aesthetic and the feel of the project. And then for me, great if my margin is wider on one versus another. Like, hopefully, I've narrowed most of my brands to where I feel like I can make money. But there's still plenty where I feel like I don't make as wide of a margin, but it's still the right decision for a project.
I think it's like this idea of we've developed preferred vendors, and there's a variety of factors of what makes them preferred. Yes, I make a margin on, I have profit built into it, but also they're not going to screw us over if something goes wrong or when something goes wrong. I know there's a way to remedy. I know the quality of the pieces because I've visited them in their showrooms. I've sat in them. I can vouch. So if you're just trying to buy something random on Wayfair, like I would never stand behind anything that I just know nothing about.
I mean, it would have to be really cheap for me to.
Well, it's like just use it once and throw it away.
It'd have to be junk stuff where I'm just like, it'll work in a pinch. Like,
but it might pinch you.
That's where I'm at on that. Is like, if you're just looking for junk to put on a shelf, sure. I mean, have at. Go ahead. Like,
yeah, or there's a place for like kind of low end poly rugs. Like, there's a place for those in some projects,
and you let people know, like,
yeah.
Hey. So I feel like that is the part of it that's made it easier, and that procurement guide has made me have fewer awkward conversations, but it also underscores the need, like why there's the need for the minimum and like what's different about it. And I think because that's out there before they're even like locked in, there has been this understanding of like,
so you're talking about minimum purchasing spend.
Yeah, like there's sort of that idea. Like I haven't had anyone yet where they were like, "Oh, well, have we hit the minimum yet? Can we give up and go do the rest on our own?" Like,
no.
There no one's like tracking it. They're just like, "Oh, okay, well, we're going to do this and this is what it is. And it's a reasonable space we want to be in." And then, okay, like that's also like, why go shop if we're going to still end up having to come back anyway? And I've had a few clients where I was in meetings or calls with the spouses with both of them, and the like one or the other would come back and go, "Isn't this what we're paying Shaun for?" And it's usually, and I don't want to play into a stereotype, but it's usually the wife would go off and she's like, "What about this light fixture?" And usually the husband's like, "I don't like this light fixture. Isn't this what we're paying Shaun for?" And then it comes back to me and I'm like, "Show me if you have a concern about the one I showed, the dining room chandelier I showed you, bring it back to me." Like, if you finding something else helps you say, "I'm looking at a style that's more like this because I respond to it," let's have that aesthetic conversation, or let's have a budget conversation. But if it's literally you're in love with another fixture, then we need to figure that out. Like, if I still have a chance, let me know if I can still come back at bat and try again. But if you're telling me it's this light fixture because I'm in love with it, then let's figure out if I need to make it work.
Yeah, and I think having this clear procurement guide and the minimum spend together, when that's happened, it's more of like, I feel like they're giving it to me, like, "Please, sir, can I have this?" Like they're, like I get to
I
be
really
the final
love
say.
this. Can it please work in the room? And you're like,
yeah,
I don't hate it. It's not offensive.
It's just a energetic shift and kind of like a power shift, which is a trust thing. Like, not like I'm going to overrule their opinions in their own home, but
right.
we can now have a conversation of like, yeah, I think that could work, but it's a little small. Or tell me what's out. Yeah, like you're saying, tell me exactly what you like. I see that you're kind of wanting something maybe more industrial. So that's a good note. Let me see what I can do. Sometimes I just ignore their suggestion, but find
and go
something
pull another option.
similar. Yeah. Because if they're like just trying to buy something from Rejuvenation or something, I still want to help them meet their minimum.
Yes.
But while giving them a good option.
Yeah. I think, I mean, I don't know. People are distractible too. Like, don't you feel?
Yeah. It's
like they're going to chase the rabbits.
And so the rabbit chasers, that I'm going back to vetting on that. Like, you've got to try to suss that out. And I've had clients tell me that that's their personality style or whatever.
Yeah.
And they're never going to be happy until they see every single option and then come back to the first one. I mean, my mom's like that. Like, hi, Mom, if you're listening, she hopefully would admit it. But it's like true. Like, when we would go shopping for a prom dress for me or whatever, like, we would have to go to every store, try on every option. Even if we liked something at the first store, we can't get that one because you just got to know that there's a better one out there.
Yeah.
And then maybe we'll come back to the first one. I will admit I've inherited some of it, but you just need to know that the person's like that in the beginning. And again, that might not be a good fit for a full service person.
I have had a few clients tell me that, and they admit that it's a problem. Like they know it's an issue. It comes up with their spouse and they'll say it. And I said, okay, so I'm not going to spend my time and energy presenting 41,000 light fixtures to you. I'm going to bring you the ones that I think are the closest to shape, scale, size, dimension, like everything we need, all the aesthetics. Like, I'm going to bring you my curated list of them. If you tell me you're just not going to sleep at night unless you go look at them, that's fine. But don't send me a Pinterest board or a shared file with a million of them. Like, that's not going to work. That's not useful. And I've had a few who said, no, I know, that's just, I'm going to do it anyway because that's my like outlet for things. And I probably will still pick what
anxiety.
you picked.
It's called anxiety.
And I can't fix all of their problems. Like, I am not trained enough for that. And so
there's no
I think
Xanax dispenser in your conference room?
I wish I could have them take some before they come to the meeting. Like, I'm sending a courier with an envelope. Like, pretty sure it's going to violate several federal laws if I do that. But the point is,
slightly
some people just have to do it. They cannot not do it. And I've learned to not take offense to it anymore because I don't feel like that's not my place. It does me no good to get upset, offended, or take it personally anymore. And I do know that it's hard to say that. It's probably easier from this side of the fence than it is when you're like a new, fresh designer and it starts happening to you. It hurts. It feels like, did I not do my job right? And over the years, I've learned that's usually not the case. It's not me, it's them.
You just have to, if it comes up later in a project and you couldn't screen it out, you have to have something, a way to stop it or give them a safe place to go do that. And like, make it an open conversation. Like, I understand you're going to feel more comfortable if you can go search every corner and under every rock. But again, I don't want all the options. Send me your top 2 or 3 when you're done, and I'll find the best solution from there.
I've 100%, because it's just, I think until I learn to stand in that power of like, I've already told you how my business operates and makes money now. So like, I've done what I'm supposed to do in being forthright with you as a customer. I've shared with you my process. You signed a contract with a minimum in it. Like, we all set the ground for this and you agreed to it. And so the hard part, I think that, especially when I read on a lot of the threads, is that a lot of designers do not feel comfortable standing in that. And they're just like, oh, well, now they're just going to go buy everything somewhere else and I'm going to lose all my money. And it's like, okay, but did we have the conversation that they're violating? Like, we don't have to go full out to the arsenal, but like, do they understand they're violating the terms of an agreement if you set an agreement? Like, maybe they don't. Maybe that's not the case. Maybe you thought you had an agreement, but you really didn't. It's really hard to like enforce it if you've never been transparent about what they agreed to. If it was just like a suggestion that they buy stuff through you, how do you come back later? It's like almost impossible.
So my minimum expenditure in my proposal, I showed this in our first Patreon hangout, I think, right?
In the Hottie Hangout?
Looks like. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just very clear. Like the like number is 56 point font or something. It's like huge.
You have to, this is the minimum, and you will probably end up spending more than that, but this is the lowest end that we can go. Like,
yeah. And then there's like three clear sections of this is the design fee, and this is what it stands for. This is the minimum furniture expenditure, and then project management is additional, and it explains it all.
Yeah.
Because it's complex. Like, it's kind of a lot of parts.
It's a little convoluted to work with a designer. I get it.
But you got to just explain it. So then they're just fine. I think it actually makes people feel more safe that they're like, okay, well, the check is written. So like, it's almost like, I mean, it would be great if this was true. It was actually true. They wrote us the blank check or the check of the expenditure.
Yeah.
And that's like the retainer, and it's spent. So it's really like up to us all to decide how it gets divvied up.
Yeah. The hard part is like the parting with the big amounts of money part. So once that's already been emotionally done, it's that much easier to physically part with it. And
not be like, oh, I can get this for $100 cheaper. Like, who cares?
Yeah. It's that whole like the buy-in. Like they're either in it or they're not.
Yeah.
And
they trust you.
I don't know. I try not to be. Look, I'm here to make money, obviously, but I'm also here to like get the jobs done and get paid for stuff and like keep myself going. And yeah, I'd love to have more projects out there where they trusted 100% of the vision and financially invested in it 100%. The reality is not every client is doing that for me. And I know for so many other designers, they're not doing that. But even if I get a big win on most of the stuff in a project, I feel like I'm winning still. And I feel like every project I move the needle a little bit further and a little bit further. And so it's also incremental, right? Like
it is. And I think it's just, yeah, it's getting that buy-in, I think, is a good term early on. Another tool that we use, I'm like just pushing the shop right now, budget calculator. I use that budget calculator in a lot of different parts of the process. And if someone's just really wishy-washy and just doesn't know if they can do this or how much they want to spend, I send it before there's even a consultation sometimes.
Because I had that on a discovery call recently where I sent, was that this week? This week's a blur, y'all. It might have been last week, but it might have been this week. But I'm like, okay, we're talking some weird numbers here. And they're like, well, we just don't know where we're at yet. I'm like, okay, well, fair. I'm going to send this to you after the call. You can take a look at it just to get some ideas flowing. So when you do book your consultation, you can already have started this. And I was like, because when you tell me you don't know what you're going to spend, I don't know if that means the sky is the limit and I can present you anything, or there really is a number, you just don't know what it is yet. And I can help you get to what is an appropriate place if you start giving me something. And that's where the budget guide, the budget calculator helps, because I don't need to know exactly, but you got to give me what ballpark am I aiming at here? Like,
yeah, I'm in that right now with a client, and it's kind of like the husband versus the wife. And then it's like a little bit of this like negotiation game, I think, because he doesn't want to give a number that I'm going to trample over.
Yeah, like double it.
Which, you know, I respect people's budgets, but sometimes decisions get made or things get added on or whatever.
You can't give them three fully furnished rooms for $25,000. I'm sorry. Not with the quality they're talking about. Like, they're going to have to give you a real number.
So that's what I think the calculator really helps, because like that client specifically has a whole house really that they need to work on, but it's a big ass house. So even though like maybe they've technically have the money, they don't want to part with it all in one go. So
they want to go on vacation and get a Tesla too.
So yeah, let's and a condo.
That's what I'm saying about the people who have the money. They want to spend it on other stuff too.
So I'm like really like leaning into when people have like a lot of rooms that they need to touch, then it's like, okay, let's complete one or two. Like maybe we'll switch out a couple light fixtures in other spaces, but you're not going to feel that sense of comfort and accomplishment until one space is 100% done. So look at the budget calculator. This is what things cost. They can quickly compute and kind of see how things add up.
100%.
Because they can just like click, click, click. I mean, it probably takes them 5 minutes. And then we can just start. Like, you got to start somewhere.
Yeah. It's just, the world is weird right now where people are still realizing how much stuff things are. And so the closer we can bring them to reality, the better. I worked with a design only client who kind of was in that same vein, where I presented the design plan for them for this living room project, and they had a lot of priorities. And I told them from the beginning, I was like, that will not work. I'm like, let me give you some quick rundown numbers right now back of the napkin and show you how that money disappears so fast. And they were like, okay, we understand. Like it took them to run through the numbers to realize how quickly it all really just adds up, where it goes, what it gets spent on, between cabinetry, lighting, upholstery. And I'd much rather have a client who's realistic about what they can get done than the person who just refuses to keep writing any more checks because they just don't want to come to terms with it.
Yeah, and then nothing's done,
or they just want to keep cheapening the quality level of the everything. And I'm sorry, but like, yeah, my 30% markup on 10 grand is not great compared to 30% of 70 grand. Like, I need to be making more volume, not doing the same amount of peddling and only getting $2,000 or $3,000 from it.
And I think that's what happens is in the beginning, people might have a bigger pot of money. Mm-hmm. And then there could be all kinds of stuff that happens. Unforeseen damage to the roof, whatever.
Yeah.
Loss of a job. Different things can happen. So that's why it's like, agree up front, because then you don't get the rug pulled out from under you. Because I think in the past, I especially have definitely been like so hopeful and wishful thinking about what this project's going to be. And then it just changes. But we didn't have an agreement about what, like, I never told them that I was expecting them to buy furniture from me. I just kind of hoped. And then they went off and did their own thing. So that's the part that really needs to stop happening. And it's not their fault. Like in that case, it's not their fault.
They have no idea. And I think that's where, when I was talking about earlier, like their expectation is one thing. When they're imagining that you're just going to give them general look and feel, and then they're going to go to Pottery Barn or West Elm or whatever and just shop till they drop somewhere. If they think that's what's going to happen, they want to do that. They're excited.
Helping. They might even think they're helping. Like, oh, let me take this off your to-do list.
Yeah,
like,
Rebecca's so busy. She's doing so much else for us. It's like, please.
We bought
the
sectional. we bought a sectional instead at Restoration, so you don't have to worry about it.
So now it's done. You can do everything else around it and it'll be so much faster now. And you're like, no, it actually will make it worse now, but thank you. Like, they don't know what they don't know.
They really don't, unless you tell them. So,
and can I just, again, if you can't stand in it and own it as the designer and have the power to even just say what they're doing that's not aligned with your practices, there's no point in saying it. Like, if you're not going to try to enforce the rule, I'm trying to imagine it like children, which I don't have any, in fairness, but I can imagine that if at some point the rules don't have consequences, it's very hard to enforce the rules of like, I'm sorry, no screens at the dining table. And if there are no consequences for that, like losing screen time because they violate the rule, eventually you have this rebellious child on your hands who doesn't follow anything you say.
And I think, like, adding to that, if you never actually set the rule, then it's almost like a manipulation on your part. Like, you're now changing the game that no one knew was being played.
They didn't know they're playing Ultra Rules
that's
Monopoly.
Not fair. It's not fair to them to be mad later because you didn't get the sofa sale because they didn't know that you wanted it.
This is so much like personal relationships because I'm hearing stuff my therapist would say, like in your relationship with your significant other stuff of like, if they don't know that's what makes you happy and helps you feel safe or comfortable because you've never vocalized that to them, then how are they supposed to provide that to you and have you not be resentful of them because they're not doing it? Like, you have to speak up.
Yeah, there could be some therapy happening in my household. And that's like one of the things is, well, I hinted at it.
Great.
I am really dense. I did not catch the hint. So,
but I don't necessarily think you're dense too, but don't you think it's sometimes there's so many, it's like being in a baseball stadium during a game and there's so many voices coming at you. Like, how are you supposed to hear the one person whispering in the corner of the stadium, the trash can's on fire, and you're like,
arms
what?
Are crossed.
Yeah, like, what am I supposed to? How am I supposed to help them? And I think it's the same with clients.
It's totally true. Just because you're simmering doesn't mean that anyone's picking up on that.
No, and I don't know. I just want other
clear
designers.
Is kind. Clear is kind.
Yeah, I want designers to know, like, I hear you. I know it's frustrating. I know it's disappointing. I know that at some phase of a project, we all put all of our hopes and dreams on this on these little projects and big projects, and we go, "You better solve all my problems." And I know that
a portfolio photo shoot.
Yeah. They're not even going to let me take pictures, and it's like they were never going to let you do that. Like, it takes that time, and we're all going to have ups and downs. But I do feel like over time you realize I'm not putting up with that anymore. That next client is going to get all the disclosure, all the information. They're going to agree to everything. They're going to do it. And then guess what? Someone's going to push back on that rule and tell me they went out and bought $40,000 worth of furniture over the weekend. And I'm going to let them know that they violated the terms of my contract. And then we're going to
hope you kept the receipt, bitch.
Yeah. And then we're going to have to talk about that also, right? Like, we're going to have to talk about, if you're like episode 92 with Kate Lester, then you're going to be coming back to them and saying, hi, I'm so sorry, but you contractually agreed to spend this much with me. And guess what? If you're Kate Lester, her contract says you owe her 20% of the minimum buy budget as like a fine or a penalty or a fee, basically. So if it was like a minimum $100,000 buy-in and you just decided not to buy it with her, you have to write her a check for $20,000 and she doesn't have to buy you anything. Like,
which it makes sense because she wouldn't have taken that project on. Like, it doesn't meet her minimums to keep her business going. So
yeah, she has a life to provide for her. And you don't have to have a 20-person team to step into that power and say, I'm sorry, but like, I would not be doing your project if I knew you were going to walk away with all of this revenue and go put it into Pottery Barn or wherever.
So if you're scared to do it and like use your words, which I will admit, like, I'm not always the most confrontational, happy person. Like, I don't like doing it either. That's why I put a ton of stuff in documentation and automation, and it kind of like make sure you read this. I need your signature that you did read it, and it takes the pressure
avoids a
off.
lot of it.
Mm-hmm. And if they did decide not to read it, then it's still on them because you required it. So
yeah. They have an option. No one forced them to sign it. You weren't holding a knife to their throat. Like,
yeah, and put it in 50-point font.
It needs to be really obvious. Like, click here, sign here, initial this, like, make it really obvious, and it forces people to slow down instead of just scroll to the bottom, sign. Because that's what we do with like our terms and conditions for Apple or whatever. Like,
Oh, yeah, I'm
whatever,
not
scroll
reading
to the
that shit.
bottom, click the box. Like, but with our work, it does make it easier. The number of times you mention it, like mentioning it in your investment guide, mentioning it on the discovery call, mentioning it at the consult, putting it in the proposal, like it needs to be consistent. We've talked about this just separately of realizing how many reminders and announcements it takes for stuff to really sink in, as we're realizing even just communicating meetings, communicating with patrons on our loyal hotties. Like, oh yeah, we all have like a million things coming at us at once. So we need 3, 4, or 5 reminders or notes or just reference things to keep everybody on the same page. And
And I've
clients are the same
even
way.
and I've even said I rely on it. Like I will see something come in like, "Oh, that's interesting." I'll wait till their follow up until I
I'll
do
wait.
something.
Yeah, I'll wait until it is immediately
They're
happening
going to
in
remind
order.
me. That event is going to have a reminder come out, so I'll wait till then. Which
Why?
okay, I don't recommend you do that, but we
But
we do.
I need it's 10 minutes before the phone call alert on my phone, because I will inevitably get lost in my thoughts one day. And I'm like, oh, shoot. Like, I completely forgot about that. I need to find a quiet place for this phone call right now. Like, it happens all the time. Clients are going to have that same thing happen. Kids, dogs, school schedules, daycare schedules, life in general. Like,
Yep.
so the more reinforcement, the better. That's my
Yeah, it's
motto.
helpful. It's helpful for them
I don't
and for
think
you.
I don't know if it'll ever like stop shopping, but I think it makes it that much easier to have the conversation, to where now I've had even some really productive conversations with clients where they're like, I'm not saying it's this, but can you find something that's like this other one? And
Exactly.
so like they're
That's what I
still
mean. Like
looking for me to do the job, but they're
the
like,
power shift happens because they know that they gave up the ownership of this piece of it.
yeah. And also the positive reinforcement. There is that sort of mind game of client relationships where you want to like reinforce. I'm sure I've talked about this. The skill of ignore, which is like
Mm.
when people are doing things you don't want them to
Highly skilled.
do for just attention, or just because they want like the drama of it all, or things, you ignore it. You do not respond to it at all because you don't want it to continue. And then it forces them to assess if they should be taking this through another channel. And that we talked about this even in adult learning principles when I worked at the bank. We were dealing with mid to senior leaders and talking about the skill of ignore, because some people are just petty and you would ignore behaviors. And the same thing happens in client relationships where you're like, I don't want them to do this. So the first thing is like, let's do the gentle redirect. And if this is not appropriate for them to be sending me 14 links with light fixtures, I'm going to ignore it for a little bit. Let's see what comes of it. And then if they press it again, then I need to be ready to address it and put them in the redirect. Like, I see that you're doing this. Remember, this is our process and this is what we agreed to. Are you on board with that? Like, getting them back on board again. Are we all agreed we're going to follow this? And then they have one more chance to say whether they're going to be compliant or not. And it does feel like it can feel childish, but you can do it in a way that doesn't feel condescending to clients. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
so I feel like our designers can do it. It's just finding that voice. And many of us probably haven't had to do that in other roles or other jobs or other parts of our lives. Like, if you've never had to do it before with people, it can feel a little bit awkward. So that's okay. The good news is it gets easier the more that you do it.
It definitely does. And just the more you feel, you just need to feel confident. And like, again, like me writing down my process and my expectations and the clear proposal writing, it just makes me feel confident because they saw this. So, and
Mm-hmm.
I agreed to take their project. So, You guys got this. We all got this. Shopping's not going to go away, so we just have to hold the line.
Yeah. It's going to be, honestly, it does get so much better. Like, I look back even on just a few years ago, and every time I've been made sure to set the process up right, it reinforces to me why I should keep doing it that way. There's tools that can help you do that. Practice will make it much better. The more every client get a little bit better, but don't lose hope. Don't let, like, it doesn't have to be that way for every project, and you don't have to just give up all of your like revenue generating possibilities just because someone pushed it. Like, they're trying. Clients, most of them are trying to do the right thing.
Yeah.
We like a rule follower. Good. Yeah, most people are. Not everyone's a supervillain. We like, also people like boundaries. I don't maybe me as a boundary setter believes.
Yeah.
I think people like boundaries. An alpha. People like limits, and they like people telling them what to do. And what was it? Where it was just talking about how if you're the person who, when people ask you what you want to do for dinner, and people are like, I don't know, whatever you want. Like, there was a study. God, I wish I had stats here, but it was like, it was talking about how you're actually less likable as a person if you are that person, because you're now putting the emotional weight of decision making on everyone else. And so now you're seen as a burden. And I
back
honestly,
to therapy. Yeah.
I back to this whole thing. I think that's what it's like with clients, is they don't want, if they say, what do you think of this inspiration room? And you're like, I don't know. What do you think of it? Like, they want you to tell them what you like or dislike about it. Like, they want to know your opinion. They want to know the pros and cons. They want to hear why or why not. They don't want to hear redirection back to you. Like, they really
I don't care, whatever you like.
Yeah. Like, they are coming to you to get an opinion. And I'm not saying be divisive or be, problematic, but I've just found that people respond so much better when I take a stance where I'm like, I don't really like that. Or my first gut instinct is to say no. And they're like, oh, why? I'm like, something's not right. And they're like, yeah, something isn't right. I'm like, see, then why are you testing me? Just tell me. But they need someone to like reflect their feelings,
Or they just don't trust their opinions. I mean, I'd love a client that doesn't trust their aesthetic opinions.
I would prefer to be deferred to in the process. Like, I don't need deference necessarily. Like, I don't need to feel like the patriarch of the environment, but I would like there to be let's let Shaun weigh in first. Let's get my opinions first. And then that makes
hired us.
That makes the shopping of it all so much better, because they're like, I see your idea, but let's take it back to Shaun. And then you're back in the position of power. So we can do it. We got it, y'all.
We got this.
Stop the shop at shop.
Stop the shop.
Stop the shop. That's the episode name. Stop the shop.
We'll see.
Okay. Where's that deference I was talking about? Okay. So until next time,
stay hot, designers.
Thanks for listening to the Hot Young Designers Club podcast.
For more on what we talked about today, check out the show notes.
Your support helps us grow, so share with your design besties.
And subscribe and leave a review on Apple Podcasts.
Our conversations continue on Instagram.
And be sure to download our monthly resources on our website and our Patreon.